Hey, it's your host, Eric. Today, we're going to dive into an idea from Dr. Shion Kabasawa's book, The Ultimate Learning Method, that might just completely flip how you think about learning. Seriously, it challenges pretty much everything we've been taught.
So let me paint you a picture. You spend your whole weekend crushing a 300-page business book. You're highlighting, taking notes, feeling super productive. Then Monday morning rolls around, you're in that big meeting, and your boss turns to you and says, "Hey, I heard you read that new book on management. What were the big takeaways?" And just crickets. Your mind is a total blank. All that work, and all you can manage is, it was really good. Lots of great points. Sound familiar?
If that scenario just made you cringe with recognition, you're definitely not alone. You've just experienced what Dr. Kabasawa calls the input illusion. It's this trap we all fall into, believing that just because we're consuming information, we're actually learning it.
So let's really break down this illusion. We're going to look at why so many of our learning efforts feel like we're just spinning our wheels, Working hard but not actually getting anywhere. It's time to get off that hamster wheel, starting right now.
This quote right here is the heart of the matter. It's from the author, Dr. Shion Kabasawa. And you gotta understand, this guy isn't just some academic. He's a practicing psychiatrist, he's written dozens of books, and he actually lives and breathes these methods every single day. His work is all grounded in real, practical neuroscience.
Dr. Kabasawa has this perfect metaphor for it. The pseudo-learner, and let's be honest, we've all been this person, is like a chef who goes to the best markets, buys all these amazing top-quality ingredients, and then just shoves them in the fridge. They never actually cook anything. And what happens? All that potential, all those great ingredients, they just rot. But the effective learner, they're a chef who goes to the market with a specific meal in mind. They buy the ingredients they need to create something valuable. So you see, the point isn't about collecting knowledge, it's about what you create with it.
Okay, so if just collecting information is the problem, what's the solution? Well, let's get into it. This next part is really the core idea of the whole book. It's a simple little ratio that's going to seem totally counterintuitive, but it changes everything. There it is, 3-7. This is the golden rule. For every 3 parts of your time you spend on input, reading a book, watching a course, you should be spending 7 parts on output. That means talking about it, writing a summary, trying to apply it, teaching it to someone else. I know, right? When I first saw that, I was shocked. Most of us are probably living at a 9-to-1 ratio, if we're lucky.
But here's the cool part, the brain science behind why this works. When you actually do something with information, when you speak it or write it, you activate the motor areas of your brain. And that sends a massive signal that basically screams, "Hey, this stuff is important, save it." Every single time you output, you're strengthening the neural pathway for that memory. It's like walking the same trail in a forest. The more you walk it, the clearer the path becomes. Input alone is just standing at the edge of the forest and looking in.
So now that we know why output is king, let's talk about how to make our input time, that 3 in our ratio, as powerful and efficient as possible. We're going to cover 2 core principles that will totally supercharge the way you take information in.
The first one is called the Z to A principle. See, most of us learn from A to Z. We pick up a book, start on page 1, and just plow through to the end. But that's actually super inefficient because our brain is just passively receiving. The most effective way? It's Z to A. You start with the end in mind, your Z. What's your goal? What question are you trying to answer? Then you actively hunt for the answers, your A. And how does our brain do this? Well, when you set a clear goal, you fire up a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. Just think of the RAS as your brain's own personal search engine. Once you give it a search term, your goal, it automatically starts highlighting all the relevant information around you and filters out all the useless noise. It's the difference between just scrolling aimlessly online and searching for best Japanese restaurant in Tokyo for a client dinner. Totally different game.
Okay, principle number 2 is all about emotion. Neuroscience has shown us that emotion is basically the superglue for memory. In your brain, the emotion center, the amygdala, and the memory center, the hippocampus, are neighbors. When you feel a strong emotion, the amygdala basically taps the hippocampus on the shoulder and says, "Hey, pay attention. This is a big deal. Save this file and mark it high priority." It's why you can remember every detail of your first big sale, but you have no idea what you ate for lunch 3 days ago.
So how do we hack this? How can we create these emotional triggers on purpose? It's actually easier than it sounds. When you learn something surprising or cool, literally say, "Wow," or "Aha," out loud. Yeah, it might feel a little weird, but that physical action helps create the emotional tag. But even more powerful is connecting new information to your life. Constantly ask yourself, how can I use this in my project next week? Or, oh, this explains that problem we had last quarter. When you link a new fact to your personal story, it's not just data anymore. It becomes a part of you.
All right, so we've got the mindset, we've got the principles. Now let's get really practical. Let's talk about 3 concrete techniques you can use right away for reading, listening, and observing.
First up, reading. You have to stop reading business books from cover to cover like a novel. Instead, you need to become a strategist. Start with a quick 5-minute recon mission. Scan the cover, the table of contents, the intro, get the lay of the land. Then, set your goals. In 1 minute, write down 3 to 5 specific questions you want this book to answer for you. And then, you start the treasure hunt. You actively hunt for the answers to your questions, going deep on those sections and just skimming the rest. You're not a passive reader anymore, you're an active explorer on a mission.
Okay, next up, listening. This goes for podcasts, lectures, meetings, whatever. Stop trying to be a court stenographer and write down every single word. Instead, just listen for trigger points, those little aha moments that make you lean in. When you hear one, jot it down and right next to it, define a next action. So the trigger point might be 3 to 7 input-output rule. The next action could be schedule 1 hour on Friday to outline a presentation on this for my team. Oh, and by the way, try to do this by hand. I know it sounds old school, but the physical act of writing actually fires up more of your brain than typing, which helps lock that memory in.
And finally, observation. When you're watching an expert do their thing, a great negotiator, a killer presenter, don't just be a spectator in the stands. Become an analyst. Be constantly asking yourself questions. Why did she phrase that question that way? What's the underlying strategy behind that decision? When you shift from just passively watching to actively questioning, you start to see the framework behind the performance. And that's the part you can actually learn and use yourself.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from the big picture problem all the way down to specific tactics. So now it's time to bring it all together and turn all of this learning into actual doing.
So let's just quickly recap the absolute must-knows. Number 1, learning is defined by output, not by input, period. Number 2, the golden rule. Aim for that 3 to 7 ratio of input to output. Number 3, use the Z to A principle. Always be a treasure hunter with clear goals. And finally, number 4, use emotion as your memory's best friend. Connect everything you learned back to your own life.
All right, so here it is, your first output challenge, and it starts right now. I don't want you to let this information just fade away. That would defeat the entire purpose of what we just talked about. So I want you to pick the single most interesting, most surprising, most valuable thing you heard today and make a plan to share it with one other person, a colleague, your partner, a friend. Explain it to them, because the second you start to explain it to someone else, that is when the real learning truly begins for you.
And there you have it. That's your first real step toward mastering the ultimate learning method. I really hope this was valuable for you. If you got something out of this explainer, do me a favor and hit like, subscribe, and share it so we can help more people stop running on that hamster wheel. And hey, if there's a book you're dying for us to break down next, drop it in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Eric, and I'll see you in the next one.